sound up here?
Can I never be nothing, not just good.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Halo shampoo, halo. Remember that one? I want to thank everybody. My heart is so warm and thankful for all of you coming here, and from the distances, from Toronto, Ottawa, from Oregon, Missouri. Thank you so, so much. So we're running a little late, and here's the reason why. There's a bad accident on the thruway, and some of the speakers that are coming up from New York City, they're running a bit late. So we're going to be running a bit late, but we got George. Where are you, George?
Right here.
Come here, George. George got a couple of words for you, and we're going to be back in a little bit to get this thing rocking and a rolling, bopping and a real bobberan, bobberan. Vote for Mr. Boogie. Remember, you better boogie before the lights go out, because tomorrow is iffy. That's in a good book. And by the way, I want everybody here to know I am one of the most hated men in Kingston, New York. The reason why, I just had a little incident today, the guys will tell you. I am a Putin puppet. Yep. And this is a political demonstration, so businesses are closing down. You are not allowed to talk about peace. You know why? Because they're pieces of crap. Little gutless boys and girls with cojones smaller than a mothball. Arrogant little boys and girls, when you call them out man to man, they don't know whether to pee or poo. We don't like you. Yep. They hate peace. Welcome to libtard land. This is the most historic four corners in America. Pre-Revolutionary War stone buildings, the only four corners in America, and I own 3 of them. The other one is the museum across the street. And I bought these, I'm not a real estate guy, I bought them because what they represent. If you look across the street that way, you can see the cupola on the office building, county office building. At that location, when Kingston was the first capital of New York State, before the British burnt it down and they moved it to Albany, the Constitution that was written here, over 70% of America's Constitution comes from this. The seeds of democracy were sown here. That's why I bought what I bought, and that's why I fight for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. A Declaration of Independence that these little low-life boys and girls hate. They hate independence. I suck up to Andy Cuomo. I like Gavin Newsom. Witless Whitmer's for me. I'll swallow any political crap they shove down my throat because I'm not a fighter. I'm a little low-life. That's not the American spirit. Gerald Celente, my real last name, by the way, is Celentano. You know, when they came to America, they changed names. And Adriano Celentano, by the way, was the Elvis Presley of Italy. I'm a lucky man, because I was born in Alta Villa Appina of Vicaquenz. I wouldn't be me. I'm only me because I'm a Napolitano, born in the Bronx, born to be free. Born to be free. That was the American spirit, and that's why you're all here today, because you're all born to be free. United we stand, divided we die. It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men, said Samuel Adams. And we are that irate, tireless minority. And I want George to say a couple of words here, and the other speakers will be here before you know it. Thanks a lot. Mwah, mwah.
Is that a hard act to follow? Let's see what I can do. So, Listen up, please. This is important. So my name is George. I'm a local citizen like the rest of you or most of you. And
No, they were from all over.
all over, excuse me. Citizens from all over, citizens of the world, citizens of this country. So I just have a few words to say, and they're not my words. They're the words of, you might have heard of him, Abraham Lincoln. And Abe and Bobby have some very important qualities in common. Honesty, integrity, devotion to the truth, and selfless dedication to public service. So here's what Abraham Lincoln said about our country. That nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. He also said, you can fool some of the people all of the time, and all of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. And we're not fools. We're not fools. We are not fooled. We see the greed and corruption behind the curtain of propaganda and censorship. We see through that curtain, behind the fearful clamor for domination and control, as though that's the answer. So, I beseech you to get those bumper stickers on your car, wear the t-shirt, call and write to local and national leaders, send your 5,000 or 5 million extra bucks to the Kennedy campaign. Speak out. Reach out to family, friends, and community. Show the world what you stand for. We the people can do this. We can elect a real president in 2024. Thank you.
Let's give my man a round of applause over here. Hey, let's give Gerald, wherever he's at, a round of applause for putting this together. You know, you can, hi, by the way, my name is Craig Pasta Jardul. Everybody calls me Pasta. I have a show called The Convo Couch. I've been doing it for 6 years. It's independent media. I focus a lot on elections. I'm an election integrity activist, traditionally from the left, I guess you can say. And I've gone and witnessed about 7 Latin American elections. Got back from Brazil not too long ago. Before that, I was in Colombia. I saw elections in Nicaragua, Honduras, Peru. And I have some good but bad news to report. Number one, I guess the good news is that they have some real democracy over in countries like Nicaragua. The bad news is that your elections here, some of the worst elections around. So just take that in mind. So if we're going to get some people elected, we got to do some work when it comes to our elections. So please pay attention to that. But let's talk about today, because you can tell a lot about an event based upon the people who were speaking. Great guys like Dennis Kucinich will be here, and of course Diane Sayre is speaking today, and awesome people like Gerald Celente. So what is this shing-ding about today? Well, in its simplest form, it's about peace. You know, that word seems to have lost its meaning. I'm sure a lot of you know what peace means, and peace is very important, not only because nothing good in life comes without peace, but without peace, freedom ceased to exist. You know, the great JFK, he gave a speech about 60 years ago. And if he was looking down on us right now, he'd probably be very upset, because we are as far away from obtaining global peace than we've ever been before. Whether we like to admit it or not, the doomsday clock reminds us that we are as closest we've ever been to complete and total nuclear annihilation. Annihilation for everyone and everything. There's no running from a nuclear holocaust. It destroys everything in its path, no matter your religion, your race, or your ideology. And make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen, we have enough missiles in our submarine fleet alone, the United States, to blow this world up 17 times over. Therefore, we must not only speak of peace, but we must fight for it. Regardless of the privileged political class that is in our way, a political class that has made global peace almost impossible. A political class that has sold their souls to the bankers, who are the real wizards of war, hiding behind the curtains. The great Smedley Butler told us almost 100 years ago that war is a racket. And guess what today, ladies and gentlemen? It's still a racket. Whether we like to admit it or not, all wars are bankers' wars. Can we say that? All wars are bankers' wars. One more time. All wars? That's right. Politicians like Nancy Pelosi and Lindsey Graham are nearly the face of the money laundering operation in Ukraine today. The true culprits of war are the bankers and the hiding behind the politicians as the blood of the poor is spilt for the profits of the rich. But we must not forget, ladies and gentlemen, this is a human problem, so therefore as humans, we can fix it. But first, we must eliminate any of the defeatist attitude we must have. We shouldn't say things like, the government's too big, we can't do anything about it. This type of attitude needs to be 86th right away, because we have a common goal. But I also believe to fix this problem, we need to take a deeper look inside ourselves. For we, as citizens of America, have fallen victim to the ruling class's greatest weapon. It's called cancel culture. I mean, how can we demand peace between two nations when we don't have peace amongst ourselves? We've allowed the social engineers to pit us against each other. And while the schools have failed our children and they don't teach them to think for themselves, we have a nation that is more divided than ever before. Current law more divided than ever before. Current law, we finally begin the process of obtaining peace, it will become addicting. We'll want more of it. Others will flock to it. Give me some of that peace, they'll say. That's what we need to do. And the rest is history. Let me just speak from the heart for a second and tell you something, my final thought. You know what I really, really hate? You ever see those videos where they just show Americans kicking the shit out of each other, fighting, beating each other up? I think to myself, the ruling class must be looking at this and laughing at us. They must be saying, hey, look at these sheep fighting like little minions. But then we see the flip side. We see videos of everyday average Americans helping people on the streets, helping homeless people, maybe cutting an old person's grass, doing whatever they can. My favorite video is these two black guys show up at this one gas station, this gas company, to help people pay their bills, knowing that people are about to have their gas shut off if they don't pay it. This one lady walks outside, and they give her some money. She tells them that she just lost her husband and that she's living in her car. She's trying to pay a gas bill so that she can get another place and have gas when she gets another apartment. You know, these two guys, they didn't care if she was black or white or Latin or Puerto Rican. They didn't care if she was Catholic or Christian or Jewish. They just cared that it was another human being suffering, and they wanted to help. That's the America I know. That's the people I know. And that's the people I'm worth fighting for peace for, and you should too. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Give it up to Gerald for throwing this together. Let's go out there, let's fight for peace, and let's get it done, everybody.
Yeah, let's fight for peace. Once upon a time, a long time ago, there was somebody by the name of Jesus Christ. And I am a warrior for the Prince of Peace. And to make it clear that that man of peace became violent when he drove the money changers out of the temple. Exactly what Craig was talking about. The wars are nothing more than for the money whores, the military-industrial complex, the bankster bandits, the mentally deranged people that we have running and ruining our lives, which, by the way, is why we have these T-shirts that you can get right over here. And by the way, there's some seats over here for people outside that want to sit down under a tent. It says, "Hey, politicians, who the F are you to tell me what to do?" And here's the back. So you can get your T-shirts. We have vendors over here and books. A great book by Joe Duran. This guy is the, he's one of the top guys that writes us in the Trends Journal about technocracy. And, of course, my book, What Zizzy Gave Honey Boy, a true story about love, wisdom, and the soul of America. Of everything I've written, that's my favorite. And again, every day, I have photos on the walls of my aunts and uncles and grandparents, great-grandparents, and I thank them every day for what they've given me and the spirit that comes from the blood of my family, and how blessed we all are to have those families, or those of us that are so lucky. As I say, if my mother was a drug addict and I didn't know my father was, you think I'd have a shot? So I'm very blessed, and I thank them all. Because once upon a time, there was a soul of America. It was in the music. It was in the dress. It was in the style. And when I was a kid growing up, never, ever, ever was there a family argument about politicians or politics. And now it's the American way. And when you look at the polls back when I was a kid growing up, and I'm born in 46, at 76, the spirit of 76, all the polls used to show the future will be better than the past. The future will be better than the past. And now the polls say the opposite. They say the opposite. The past, let's make America great again. No, let's make America healthy again, as Gary Null says, and he's going to be on at 2 o'clock. So we also have with us today a woman that's also speaking out for peace and doing what she can to run against the crime syndicate that morons and imbeciles call the government, the Repulsivkins and Democrats. There's not a war that they didn't love and a war they didn't support. Look at those little clown boys like little Bernie Sanders, little fat boy that couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag. He bullshits about how all the wars he was against. Hey, fat boy, how about all the ones you were for? Hey, how about AOC, FUC, you know what, Kay? Yeah. You all voted to send $40 billion of the money you steal from me and others that work like crazy to give to the crime syndicate called the military-industrial complex to send to Ukraine to keep fighting a bloody war and bloodying the killing fields. So here she is, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Diane Sayre.
Thank you. I am Diane Sayre, and I am running as an independent candidate in 2024 against Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. We do not know one promise these men made, one pledge they gave, one word they spoke. But we do know they summed up and perfected by one supreme act the highest virtues of men and citizens. For love of country, they accepted death and thus resolved all doubts and made immortal their patriotism and their virtue. Those words, were spoken by Union Army Major General, then Congressman James A. Garfield, on the first Memorial Day, May 30th, 1868. 23 years later, President Garfield would make the same sacrifice, shot as he boarded a train in Washington, D.C. My question today, this Memorial Day weekend, when we are on the brink of nuclear war with Russia, or perhaps China, or both, is how might we best honor those who gave their lives for noble purpose? And what was the purpose of that gift that we might fulfill it? And another question, is it noble to love one's country when it is doing evil? Well, you might argue, when those Union soldiers died, the Union was good and they were fighting for a noble cause. Do you think President Lincoln would have wanted to memorialize only the soldiers of the Army of the Potomac, but not the soldiers of the Confederacy? Why did he say, with malice toward none and charity for all? So why should we remember all of those soldiers from all wars who gave their lives, including those who gave their lives for unjust causes? Should we honor the memory of those who died in Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan, or all of the places where no one knows Americans have been fighting? Or should we only memorialize those who died fighting Hitler? Well, Biden's taken care of that one. We don't celebrate the defeat of Hitler anymore, but I think we should. So why do we honor these soldiers, and why should we? Because I know in your gut you feel as I do that we must remember all of them, and we remember them particularly on this weekend. We remember them because they died when they could have lived, and because we know that our mission, whatever they might have believed they were fighting for, is to ensure that their lives were not in vain, that not only will they not be forgotten, but that something good will come of mankind in which they will have contributed a part. As Abraham Lincoln said in his Gettysburg Address, they gave their lives that the nation might live. And we ask, live to what end? What can we do here now to ensure the immortality of those souls, whatever they thought they were fighting for? We say that mankind will become better as a result and thereby give meaning to their sacrifice. For those Americans who died in wars, we resolve to form a more perfect union, to establish justice. And there's much more, but it is incumbent upon us to make our nation good. And I think the founders of our republic, some of whom walked these very streets where we are today, would appreciate it if we dedicated ourselves to upholding not merely the words, but the intent of our Constitution. In the case of our republic, we owe it to those who made the ultimate sacrifice to make our nation good. It has become apparent to me that God is a poet, or at the very least, he's appointed William Shakespeare as his Secretary of State. Just take a look at the world. Xi Jinping and Putin, along with other large nations, which in our arrogance we tend to ignore, maybe because your neighbors can't find them on a map, but China and Russia are presiding over an entirely new paradigm which is based on mutual respect and economic growth. And I do have to mention that this order was proposed decades ago by someone who paid for it by many slanders and jail time, Lyndon LaRouche, which Sergei Glaziev, the Russian economist, will tell you. Saudi Arabia and Iran have restored diplomatic ties, and the murderous war in Yemen can be brought to a close. Syria has been welcomed back into the Arab League. Railroads and ports are being built, opening up entirely new corridors of trade. New currencies are being used for this trade to avoid the use of the now weaponized US dollar. Nations in Africa are refusing to bow to their former colonial masters and taking initiatives on the world stage to bring peace. Their initiatives for peace being aggressively pursued by the Pope and President Lula of Brazil. Imagine what Shakespeare would have done with Zelensky's visit to the Arab League, where he lectured people from Syria, Iraq, Libya, and Gaza about turning a blind eye to the occupation of Ukraine by Russia. But above all, where is our Francisco Goya with Shakespeare as the caption writer, who would paint the portrait of the latest G7 meeting, which occurred as Bakhmut, now known as Artemovsk, was finally taken by Russia, putting the lie to the fable of the impending Ukrainian victory, which Victoria, aptly named Newland, just said in Kiev will take from 1 to 16 years to achieve. Let me ask you here, where was this meeting of the G7, the gods of Olympus, the masters of the universe? Hiroshima. Please remember what happens to the gods of Olympus. And who was there in the place which should have been held by Russia, but an arrogant fool in his sweatshirt, thanking them for their support and groveling for more support. Our President Biden chose the G7 meeting in Hiroshima, the place where we dropped one of 2 nuclear bombs ever dropped, killing hundreds of thousands of people, to announce his intent to deliver F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. Never mind that they have no pilots who can fly them or runways that can support them. It hasn't always been this way, and I am very pleased that Robert Kennedy Jr. has entered this presidential race. Because he is reviving another spirit, the spirit of his father, his uncle, and their quest for peace and economic justice. 60 years ago, on June 10th, President John F. Kennedy chose the commencement ceremony of American University class of 1963 to deliver a remarkable address. And on Memorial Day, let us remember that, like President Garfield, President Kennedy was a veteran, and he too was assassinated. And I will share a small section of that speech, which you should read on your own this weekend on June 10th. Kennedy said, "I speak of peace because of the new face of war. Total war makes no sense in an age when great powers can maintain large and relatively invulnerable nuclear forces and refuse to surrender without use to those forces. It makes no sense in an age when a single nuclear weapon contains almost 10 times the explosive force delivered by all the Allied air forces in the Second War. It makes no sense in an age when the deadly poisons produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of the globe and to generations yet unborn. I speak of peace, therefore, as the necessary rational end of rational men. I realize that the pursuit of peace is not as dramatic as the pursuit of war, and frequently the words of the pursuer fall on deaf ears. But we have no more urgent task. That's from Kennedy. I have one sentence. As I consider the impasse before us with the knowledge that for historical and lawful reasons, Russia cannot and will not lose this war, but at the same time Boris Johnson is running around Texas to shore up congressional support for more weapons to Ukraine, calling to mind Maggie Thatcher's visit, you remember that, to put the iron in Bush's spine for war with Iraq, it seems there is only one way out, and that is that our republic, the United States of America, must return to the anti-imperial principles on which it was founded. We are citizens of a republic. We are not subjects of King Charles, and we should act like it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diane. Very much appreciated. And what Diane was saying about President Kennedy's speech, it was to the graduating students at American University, June 1963. He ends that speech by saying, "America will never go to war again." 5 months later, Jack, you're dead. And as RFK Jr. had said, the CIA assassinated his uncle and his father. This is not our America. And we must do something to reverse it. You know, I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate at 26 years old. I was on the other side. I used to run major political campaigns in Westchester County in the early 1970s. I know what a freak show it is. When I quit, none of my friends could believe it. I wasn't going to be the kind of guy that bends over and sucks up and grovels my way to get to the top, because that's all the political system is. It's the little jerks I hated in high school and college that wanted to be class president and head of the student council. And we have with us now a man that fights for freedom, writes for freedom, sues for freedom, a constitutional attorney and an author. John Whitehead is a formidable champion of the Constitution, and he's head of the Rutherford Institute. You got to look him up. This guy is number one. I met him when I was a speaker at Ron Paul's, one of his events in D.C. a number of years ago, and I was taken aback by what John Whitehead said our country is about and how we've lost it. And again, he's written more than 30 books, and he's a defender of the Bill of Rights, in and out of court. And talking about the Bill of Rights, once upon a time, there was a thing called the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Happiness? Screw you! I'm little Andy Cuomo. I'm a daddy's boy, born on third base and thought I hit a home run. Close down your business. Hey, you see the people in the farmers market there? Oh, they really hate me because I had a peace and freedom rally when little Andy Cuomo locked down everything. And all these little boys and girls over there were painting circles 6 feet outside the farmers market. And when you went in, they counted how many people went in. Because Celente The wind blows in straight lines at 6 feet. It does not go up and down or around. And when you go to the vendor's booths, you must stand 6 feet apart because the wind blows exactly 6 feet. These little clowns are like kindergarten kids, painting little circles in front with chalk. And they hate me. Oh, do they hate me. Cowards. Little cowards. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm Warren Wilhelm Jr. Oh, no, I'm going to change my name to de Blasio so I get the Italian-American votes. People listening to a little piece of scum like that little jerk that destroyed the lives and livelihoods around the United States and around the world, shutting down businesses to fight the COVID war. The office occupancy rate in New York City, 49%. The office vacancy rate, 20%. Over there in San Francisco, and again, they got it wrong in the King James Bible. They say the meek shall inherit the earth. They misspelt it. The geeks have inherited the earth. They're the clowns that shut down first. Office vacancy rate at 30%. Vacancy rate. LA, 30%. 10 biggest cities in America, 49.9% office occupancy rate. The damage that this has done is incalculable. And again, we write about it each week in your Trends Journal, and a lot of you people are subscribers to the Trends Journal. Please, everybody, do what you can to support the Trends Journal, because John Whitehead and Nisha, his wife, we publish their articles in the Trends Journal every week, because this is a man that stands up and fights for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Whitehead.
He's a hard dude to follow. Anyway, thanks a lot for having me here, sir, and I appreciate it, and the ability to talk a bit about fighting for freedom. Yeah, I've been at this thing for over 40 years. I founded a nonprofit organization called the Rutherford Institute, which basically we defend people. I raise money to defend people who can't find a lawyer. When I was a young man, I had so many people come to me for help, and they couldn't afford lawyers. So I said, well, I'll start a group, and we'll defend anybody for any reason. And we're in a lot of different cases across the country, cases that irritate some people, which is good. And irritation produces, what they say, when oysters, pearls? Sometimes pearls. But to give you a little background on my history, I was an infantry officer. I had orders for Vietnam. I was training at Fort Benning, and I injured my back. And I was sent to basically Fort Hood, Texas, to train troops, which I did. I was an expert marksman, exactor, blah, blah, blah. And I was, at that time, not a peace activist. I was concerned about what was going on. But what was interesting was a lot of men in my platoon coming back would tell me stories. I mean, I had one fellow who was like this all the time. He was like this, and I said, can you tell me what's wrong, man? Do you need to see, someone, a therapist or something? He goes, no. I said, what happened? And he said he'd come back from Vietnam. He said, we were in the valley over there in Vietnam, and I couldn't believe it, and I couldn't believe it either as an infantry officer. He said, my commander told us to break down our rifles and clean them and all that in the middle of the day. We were a little nervous about doing that. And he said they were halfway into cleaning their rifles, and he said the Vietnamese soldiers started coming down the hill shooting at them. He said a man beside him got a bullet hit his head and blew his head off. He said people were falling around him. He got up. It was a massacre. And he said they finally got their weapons back and pushed them back and got off. But he said, I never got over that. And another story is another fellow who told me, and it just kind of blew my mind. He was a helicopter pilot. He had gotten back from Vietnam. He was in my platoon. And he said that it freaked him out that when he would fly missions to bomb, he was told by his commanders that always expend all your ammunition before you come back. And we know what that was for, right? Does anybody know what that was for? Make money. The people making the money off of on the round stuff. He said they all did it, and I didn't know that, by the way. That's what he told me. But he said what freaked him out is when they were flying over villages and stuff, that they would actually see people running around the ground. They'd be shooting down their bombs and missiles. He said he saw children sometimes fall. He said, I never got over that. War is crazy. And he was just like that. And those people started changing my view of war because they were actually in it and they saw some of the craziness and the massacre. And while I was at Fort Hood, I had a commander. He was a pretty good commander, but one day I went into my job to do whatever I did to meet with him, and he always had a bulletin board outside where he put a message up. Well, I went in, and on the board it said, us 4, them 0. Do you remember the Kent State shootings? That's what he was detailing. The 4 people had gotten shot down in a really bad way. And so I went into his office and sat down and said, I got a message for you. If you do not take that off right now, I'm going above you and fighting you. And he basically went, F you, get out of here. And I went, see you later. And I met with colonels and stuff and said, I'm going to go public on this. If you do not tell this guy to erase that and quit that kind of stuff. And they did. They made him take it down. And I was immediately moved into a top secret project at that point, where I worked with some really strange things that I can't talk about. But a lot of that really affected me as I saw what was happening in those cases. And I came committed at that time that I was going to go to law school. I had a friend who was in law, who had become a lawyer, and I said, I want to do something good for society, something that will advocate peace and freedom. He said, get out there and become a lawyer, man, and fight for truth. Well, I did. I got out, I went to law school. I got involved in cases even in law school supporting people and peace activists. And after I got out of law school, I started the Rutherford Institute, again, which is a nonprofit that raises money to defend people who can't fight their issues. We've been involved in over 200 Supreme Court cases, by the way, and all kinds of cases across the land. But one thing that's so interesting, by the way, is the people that come to me for help. A lot of them are veterans. I've had so many veterans come to me over the years, and they're seeking help. And the stories they tell me are so bizarre. But to give you one that it's just one of the most bizarre cases I ever handled, it was a young Marine, a 26-year-old decorated Marine. This was about 6 or 7 years ago, by the way, this case took place. He came to me, and actually what happened was his mother called me crying. And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, no one will help my son. He's been put in a mental hospital. I said, what? I said, for what? And she said, well, let me tell you the story. What happened was he worked at home on his typewriter. He had been jogging in the morning. He had come home, but he was a real activist. He was writing letters to generals, criticizing them, telling them to F off, that they were evil. He became a peace activist. He was sending letters to President Obama at the time saying you should be arrested for your executive orders, you're doing illegal activities. He was saying all kinds of, some of them was semi-threatening, of course. Well, one Saturday morning after he got through jogging, he was at home, and all of a sudden he hears a noise outside, and he goes to his window. And by the way, he didn't own any weapons. He said the only weapon he had at home was his knife he used to cut fruit with. They basically surrounded his home, came to his front door. There was the men in black, FBI agents, NSA, people like that, SWAT teams. And he said, what are you here for? He said, we're concerned about some of your activities. Would you please step out? And this is something you got to be careful about, stepping on a porch when they did not have a warrant. They couldn't get a warrant. They had no evidence of him having a weapon or anything. He stepped out, and when he did, at that point, they grabbed him. All of them took him out to his yard. They slammed him against the fence and ripped his back open. Took him to the local police station. This was in Richmond, Virginia. And he asked for a Band-Aid and for someone to put something on his back. They put a prison shirt, he said, which crept into the cracks and hurt so bad. They put him in a jail cell. They brought in a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist gave him a 5-minute exam and said he was basically gone off into Lula land. He was crazy. But the main reason he thought so was because this man was a conspiracy theorist. He believed in the 9/11 attacks were set up by America. And that was the main reason. He had a short hearing by a judge for about an hour, and he was committed to a mental hospital. And he was there, locked in. The strange thing that really scared me, and Gerald's saying it, the freedom in our country, this country's at war with the American people. I mean, they just are. That's why I wrote a book called Battlefield America, which I go into all these issues. But, yeah, the scary thing was that they put him in the middle of the hospital. He couldn't get out. I filed a lawsuit in federal court, and we won. The judge looked at all the evidence and said there was no reason for this man to be in prison or whatever. And it was a freaky time, by the way. And what was really scary to me is one day he called me on the phone and said, "John," and I said, "Yes." He said, the psychiatrist here is going to tell me he's going to force meds onto me. I do not want meds. And the psychiatrist was listening, so I said, "Well, under Virginia law, you have to have a court order to force someone to take meds. This guy does have a court order, we'll have to sue him." Boink, the phone went dead, kind of. But what I found out here, and this is a scary thing, this is like war with the American people. These things are called civil commitments. This is why no legal groups would touch it but us. Everybody gives in to civil commitments. What are civil commitments? Where people are put into psychiatric wards. In Virginia alone, 20,000 annually at that time. Listen to this. 1.6 million annually in America as a large. I had a reporter from Los Angeles call me when she saw the case and said, 80,000 alone, John, out here. And I was going, what in the world are we allowing to happen in America? Why are we doing this? We've gone crazy. And we should never allow anything like that to happen, folks. I tell you, we're dealing today, and I'm just going to give you some of my general thoughts before I end my speech. We're dealing with a very paranoid government, by the way, and what I call the so-called deep state wants control of the American people. They want our money and they want our control. Just to give you an example, there was a detailed study in 2014 out of Princeton University where professors studied where money congregated in America. Was anybody got a guess where it might congregate? What city? Washington, D.C. They said the government's run by 585 billionaires, and their quote, it was a good quote out of it. He said, basically, when the average citizen anyway seeks to do anything, they always lose among these people. These people control everything that's going on in the country. And what we're finding and seeing is that the government today, I would be honest with you, would lock up the people who wrote our Declaration of Independence. They would think they were crazy. It would render them extremists. Now, under most presidents recently, including the Biden administration, anybody that creates disinformation, conspiracy, is basically considered an extremist. The government has passed various acts which basically say that if you exercise your rights under the Constitution, you speak truth to power, criticize the government, you're put on a watch list almost automatically. The Department of Homeland Security, and most people don't know this, issued 2 reports a few years ago. One was right-wing extremism, which broadly defines, listen to this, right-wing extremists as individuals and groups that are mainly anti-government, this is a quote, rejecting federal authority in favor of state or local authority, or rejecting government authority entirely. And then they issued a left-wing extremism memo, which labeled environmental and animal rights activists as extremists. And then the really dangerous one that I see dealing with veterans was they also launched their Operation Vigilant Eagle program. Again, these are all detailed in my book, Battlefield America, on our website. It calls for surveillance of military veterans returning from Iraq, Afghanistan, and other so-called far-flung places, characterizing all veterans basically as extremists, potential domestic terrorists, because they may be, and this is a quote from the report, disgruntled, disillusioned, or suffering from the psychological effects of war. So, what these reports say, the so-called American government believes that anybody opposing government is an extremist, and the so-called deep state is going to fight that. There was another study that's really important, and you need to understand this. It was conducted in 2018 out of the SMU University, which again studied where psychopaths gathered in America. Can you guess where that might be? Washington, D.C., yes. Very detailed study, but very well done. A psychopath is a person with a particular collection of antisocial, anti-human traits, a powerful sense of spite and inability to consider the welfare of others. That's who is governing our country? Well, I'll tell you one thing. While I see stuff like this, crap like this, I will take a stand, and we all should take a stand and speak truth to power. To control us, and this is the key thing here, and I'm warning people forever. To control us, the government's doing surveillance on everything we do. Your cell phone watches you, your television watches you, screen devices, everything is watching us today. They're collecting an amazing amount of information so that we can be controlled. And most people don't realize this, but the Microsoft and Amazon and companies like that have billion-dollar contracts where they maintain the intelligence cloud for all 17 intelligence agencies of the United States government. What does that mean? Amazon, Microsoft have all the information that the government has, and the government has all the information they have. So everybody has a file. We're a nation of suspects now. If that doesn't make you want to get up and fight and say, I'm not putting up with this crap anymore, nothing will. And I will say this, that as I mentioned earlier, again, the government's very, very paranoid. There are 200, listen to this, there are 200 federal agents armed to the teeth with hollow point bullets and weapons today in this country. Can I give you a few examples? IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, has stockpiled 4,500 guns and 5 million rounds of ammunition in recent years, including 621 shotguns, 539 long barrel rifles, and 15 submachine guns, plus agents to carry those. The Veterans Administration, oh Lord, they have 11 million rounds of ammunition, equivalent to 2,800 rounds for each of their officers, along with camouflage uniforms, ride helmets, shields, specialized image enhancement devices, and tactical lighting. The Department of Health and Human Services acquired 4 million rounds of ammunition in addition to 1,300 guns, including 5 machine guns, 189 automatic firearms for its Office of Inspector General. And according to an in-depth report called The Militarization of the U.S. Executive Agencies, the Social Security Administration secured 800,000 rounds of ammunition for their special agents, as well as armor and guns. And here's a good one. The Environmental Protection Agency owns 600 guns. The Smithsonian Institute now employs 620 armed special agents. Is that called martial law? I mean, at any moment, and I tell people this, I have people come to me and say, we're going to do this, we're going to fight back, we're getting our guns and we're going. Well, I'm a Second Amendment advocate, but I just tell people, be careful. They're waiting, they're watching, they're going to get you. They'll shoot you down. And when they do it, the news media will go, they got the thugs, way to go government. And I believe, listen to this, even Amtrak and NASA now, that shoots the rockets up, have SWAT teams. So, I guess the question is, what's this say and where are we going is the question. And as I advocate here, we're under a state of martial law. We have to dismantle that state of martial law. And it's going to take a lot of hard work and fighting to do it. And it's people like, again, I'll go back and say here, people like, and I'll give you some quotes here that are good from some of our founding fathers, and they would be taken away, by the way, probably the mental institution. Thomas Jefferson, here's a quote. What country can preserve its liberties if their rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the right of resistance? Let them take arms. As he concludes, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. They'd lock him up today, folks. He'd get arrested. And Benjamin Franklin proclaimed, Democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. Liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. So, we're at a real point that is really, really scary. And I'll say this, as I see artificial intelligence developing now, there were 2 Google executives that recently resigned and said, we created God. They're freaking out, these guys, because they're seeing something that's going to be so inhuman and so difficult to fight. And we're up of faith. I mean, Elon Musk said it best, and it was a good quote. He said, if we have a human dictator, that dictator will die, and there'll be a possibility of freedom. If we have an artificial intelligence dictator, it will rule forever, and it will be evil. Now, that's where we're at. So people say, what can we do to fight back? And I've been advocating this for a long time. I'm telling people, learn your Bill of Rights. We have Bill of Rights. You can go to our website at rutherford.org. We have things. We can train kids. You can train your children, because in the public schools today, they don't read the Declaration of Independence because it advocates an overthrow of government. And the Bill of Rights, I talk to college law students that can't tell me the freedoms in the First Amendment. They don't know it. You know, I'm going, and I had one law student come to me who was in our intern program. She said, I was shocked. I went into, this is one of the best universities in the country in America. She said, our constitutional class, our constitutional law professor, that day, first day in class, he said, there's one area we will not be studying this year about the Constitution, the First Amendment. Well, why do you think about that for a second? What does the First Amendment say? You can rebel against government, you can picket government, you can get your redress and get grievances, you can peacefully assemble. They don't want you peacefully assemble. They don't want you doing any of that. And that's why they're not doing it in schools. So I'm telling people what we need are really good, clear rebels, people that will take a stand for other people. And I've been asked, several times, why are we on this planet? There's one reason, to help one another. We're here to help one another. We're no better than any of the lowest people on this planet. Do not think you're better than anybody else. No, you're not. You're here to help one another. As long as we're willing to practice empathy in our lives and in our communities and get back there and fight for our freedoms. And here's how we can do it. What does the 10th Amendment say? Local governments can nullify acts of the federal government. Get in your local communities, take them over, you civil liberty advocates out there, and start advocating getting government policies, all this radar equipment and stuff we can see, and FBI and all that stuff in your communities, all these overextending laws coming out of D.C., and fight back. That would scare the crap out of people in Washington. They don't want to see that. They don't want you thinking you have any power. They want you to do one thing, vote. And I say voting is good, but that's not going to save you. Political activism is going to save you. You're going to have to get together in groups, what I call civil liberties oversight committees, and say, go into your local city council meetings and basically say, hey, we're going to picket till you do the right thing here. We need our local governments to be local governments, not extensions of Washington, D.C. So the key to freedom, in my opinion, is, folks, speak truth to power, but learn your rights. Education precedes efficient action. Thank you.
What a man, what a man. Yeah, what a man, what a man. All about our freedom. All about our freedom with these low-life pieces of garbage scum crap called politicians have stolen from us. And again, you get your T-shirts right over here. Hey, politicians, who the F are you to tell us what to do? Here we are. Bye-bye. Again, I can't use the proper language, but when you call these little boys out man to man, they don't know whether to, I guess we could say pee or poo. This is about make America healthy again. And it was a great Gary Null that came up with that topic. This is more than just about making us healthy again in terms of the loss of the American spirit that the people here are fighting for to bring back, and all of you are fighting for to bring back. And again, thank you for all of you for coming here and the far distances that you've traveled from Oregon to Missouri to Pittsburgh, all over the country coming here. So thank you so much. And again, we have, of all the books I've written, this is my favorite, What Zizzy Gave Honey Boy. And you can get a copy over here. I'll sign it for you. And the great book by Joe Duran, it's called Dehuman. And he's the top technocracy guy. He has our articles in the Trends Journal each week. So in talking about making America healthy again, this is the way I see it. And again, they'll hate me over there for saying this. Once upon a time, when I was a little kid, my mother, may her soul rest in peace, raised me. They didn't send me to what they call a daycare center, where you got low-paid people feeding kids that are out of your mind when you're growing up crap. And you look at the numbers, the obesity rates. You go back, it wasn't like this. You look at Woodstock, the pictures, 1969. Everybody's in good shape. So if you have a child, I guess it's been going on since the beginning of times. The parents raised a child, not a stranger, that's feeding them crap of junk food. So that's one way I look at it. And another way, I have my sister here, Grace. I write about her in my book, What Zizzy Gave Honey Boy, about a lot of other stuff. And we grew up in the Bronx. And one day, she's riding on Boston Post Road, or Allerton Avenue, actually, and she fell off a bike and broke her arm. And they put the cast on wrong. Rather than putting the traction bar between her thumb and her hand, they put it under her thumb and put the cast on. And she lost 3/4 of her hand at 12 years old. So my sister was also had 2 strokes, and she was in a nursing home, the best place in America, the Hebrew Home in Riverdale. And we're not Jewish, but she got in there. She had a private room. Every time I would go see her, hey, Gracie, how you doing? And I look at all the people, all dead, all shot up. So this December, I brought her up here, and she's in one of my buildings over here. I have a wonderful woman, Keisha, takes care of her 24 hours a day. My sister is a totally different person. Totally different. She wasn't talking. Now she sits out here and paints. I give her the newspaper. She goes, oh, the New York Times. And she's right over here, my sister Grace. And to tell you about having that spirit of Napolitanos, born in the Bronx, born to be free, my sister Grace, in 1968, they bought she was married at the time, they bought what they called a gin mill on Queens Boulevard in Queens and in Woodside, right across from the Calvary Cemetery. And they figured that, you know, after the people bury somebody, they'll come over there and eat. So they turned this gin mill, as they used to call them back in the days, into a nice little restaurant. But it didn't work. So she asked my father, may he rest in peace, to help her out. And my father's there one day, and this guy comes back, and he said, Lou, I just got back from California. And they got these things called topless dances. And this woman, Carol Doda, is doing his stuff, and there are people lined up around the block. So to make a very long story short, here it is. Grace's Lucky Lounge, the second topless go-go lounge in New York City. And I was a bartender there at 22 years old. I say to Gracie, who could want a better brother than you? So that's my sister Grace. And so what I'm saying to everybody is that if you put a child in a daycare center or put somebody in a nursing home, you may as well put them in jail. That's the way I look at it. And again, the motto of the Trends Journal is, think for yourself. And to keep the spirit going of freedom and peace and love and joy, we have with us a great guy today, Sean Griffin, who wrote a song during the COVID war, and it became a hit on a number of different movies and channels. And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sean Griffin.
How you going? Thanks for having me today. My name is Sean Griffin, and so this song was featured in a documentary. Actually, it was during the Iraq War, and it was called "Committing Poetry in Times of War." And so I'm going to do that song for you today. It's about a young soldier who's going off to war, and he's writing a letter to his loved one, and it's his last letter. And though I love you, I must go and face this thing called war. I know now not what lies in store, far away on distant shore, far away on distant shore. And if I die, my lips grow cold, promise me you won't grow old alone. Find a man both strong and true, make sure that he realizes too that you are the most beautiful thing this simple man has ever seen. The simple man has ever seen. And love him as you would me, and dream all those simple dreams, and go and start a family, and try your best to forget about me, and try your best to forget about me. I curse the sword and curse the gun. It steals the youth, it robs the young. It robs the mothers of their sons. It steals the breath of first love song. It steals the breath of first love song. Forever I will always be the boy you loved down by the sea. Forever I am 23, but the world went on without me. The world went on without me. And though I love you, I must go and face this thing called war. I know now not what lies in store, far away on distant shore, far away on distant shore.
Bravo, bravo. Let's hear it. Let's hear it for Sean Griffin. Amen. And again, working at Grace's Lucky Lounge, women too. You got to be equal here. We have with us now another man that's well renowned, an international, national radio host, and a crusader for peace, Mr. Frank Morano, Paisano.
Good morrow. I love that. That's a listener. Hello. I got stuck in traffic driving up here from Staten Island for about 2 hours, so I wasn't sure if I'm actually in the right place. So maybe you guys can help me out. Is there anybody here that is willing to lose one American life to defend a tiny portion of eastern Ukraine? No, but okay. So it sounds like we're in the right place. And by all means, if you are, I don't think anybody's going to stop you from going ahead and doing that. I also want to thank everybody, especially Deacon Celente, on such a warm day like this for adopting the Fetterman-Zelensky rule of not having anybody wear ties. That's a big, big help. It's so appropriate that we're doing this on Memorial Day weekend, as you've heard from John Whitehead and Diane Sayre and from Gerald and from everybody, because I think, I don't know about you, but I think myself and a lot of the people you're going to hear from, we're not anti-military. I think the fact that we're here and the fact that we're asking for no more wars and no more wasteful wars and not to see American lives wasted or really any lives wasted for a conflict that has nothing to do with the average rank and file American or human being. We are the most pro-military people there are because we don't want to see any more servicemen die needlessly. And that's why I'm glad to be here. And in spite of, there's nowhere that I would rather be this weekend than right here, because there's not a lot of places on my one day off. Thank you. On my one day off, there's not a lot of places that I would want to drive 2.5, 3 hours to and spend the weekend away from my 18-month-old son. But I felt it was so important to be here because I'm trying to teach my son some lessons. He's learning about dogs, he's learning about cats, and he's trying to figure out what a car is, what a truck is. He learns about colors. He's just starting to put together a vocabulary. And one of the earliest lessons that I've been trying to teach him, because we have a lot of dogs in our neighborhood, like a lot of semi-suburban and urban areas, is that if you slap a Rottweiler or a Pit Bull in the face and that dog bites you, that is not what we call an unprovoked attack. And unfortunately, that is the narrative that has been spun by the propagandists in both the government and the media about what's going on in Europe now. Don't be fooled into thinking this war began in February of 2022. This war did not begin then. It didn't even begin with Crimea. It didn't even begin when the United States participated in a coup, a violent coup to overthrow a democratically elected leader in Ukraine. This war began more than 30 years ago when the United States broke its word to the world and to Russia, saying that there would be no eastward expansion of NATO. And to ignore that, is the equivalent of starting saying the ABCs with the letter L instead of the letter A. Now, just by saying that, which I say regularly on the radio, there are, I'd say, about a third of the audience that likes to refer to me as the 21st century media equivalent of Neville Chamberlain, and maybe about a third of the audience that is much more comfortable writing me off as a Russian stooge. Let me tell you something. People who have nothing to say, people who can't respond to logic or ideas or history or facts, that's what they do. They resort to ad hominem attacks and name calling. And there were people that were calling me names and saying, I can't believe you're going to be at a rally with that person. And it's funny, everybody had a different villain that I shouldn't be appearing. That's going to diminish your credibility. I said, look, I don't have that much credibility to begin with. But you guys should understand that just because you're here standing up against war and for peace, it doesn't make you a Russian stooge or a Neville Chamberlain, although the Neville Chamberlain analogy is one of the most misunderstood, misquoted, and inaccurate things that only people that know almost nothing about world history and World War II ever even cite. So don't be embarrassed because you're here with somebody that you might disagree with. What we're doing here, having people that probably disagree on all sorts of issues gather under the same umbrella, that is exactly what should be happening in the United States and the world today, and that's precisely what's missing. I have a lot more gray hairs now than when I first started on the radio, and with some age has come a little bit of wisdom, and I've learned a few lessons. I used to think that there was nobody that really benefited from war. And if you think about it, that makes sense. The bartender like Gerald Celente, the farmer, the taxi driver, how do they benefit if their government spends a whole lot of money to kill other people and get people killed? Well, they don't. Going into debt to build bombs does not help the bartender, the radio talk show host, the rank and file accountant, anybody. But what I only discovered recently in a large way is that there is a tremendous war industry in this country and this world, and there are all sorts of people that benefit from war. They happen not to be the bartender, the farmer, the accountant, the guy down the block. They happen to be Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and General Dynamics. They have done very well while not necessarily doing very good. And thank goodness we're in a country where we have two major political parties, right? I mean, isn't it great that we have two parties that have great philosophical debates like, should we go to war with Russia or China? Right? Isn't it great that we have two major political parties that put forward big ideas like, should we shoot down a balloon over land or over water? Isn't it great that we have two major political parties that debate, well, should we help Iran build nuclear weapons or Saudi Arabia build nuclear weapons? Because there are some countries where they only have one choice. Boy, I'm glad we're not in one of those countries. But if you look at what's gone on here, as the Ukraine war has ramped up, it happened to benefit the stock price of Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, and General Dynamics exponentially. Doesn't matter what inflation is doing. Doesn't matter that people can't afford to live in the cities and the states they grew up with. Doesn't matter that they can't afford to buy eggs, can't afford to buy the bare necessities of life. Their stock price has gone up precipitously over the last year and a half or so. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. And isn't it interesting that after we finally got out of the longest war in American history in Afghanistan, and it looked like, well, maybe there was going to be a little blip in the bottom line of some of these military defense contractors, isn't it interesting that almost at exactly the same time, we began this war in Ukraine? Now, I'm sure that's just a coincidence as well. You know, I don't want to sound like I'm defending Vladimir Putin or any other autocrat or anybody else that's doing anything horrible around the world. But when you're faced with an international crisis, you have a choice of pursuing diplomacy or war. And it's very clear what President Biden and the Republican so-called opposition in Congress has been pursuing. Their effort has been to pursue war. Just 4 months ago, President Biden was asked by Vladimir Zelensky, please send us F-16s. And Biden, to his credit, had a rare moment of restraint. He said, no, we're not going to do that. That would escalate things beyond what we're prepared to do. And look, just 4 months later, we are sending them F-16. Afghanistan wraps up. Ukraine ramps up. You get the sense that everything is sort of upside down. Everything that's down is up. Everything that's up is down. Crime is up. Our level of security at the border is down. Public corruption is up. Confidence in our public leaders are down. The cost of living is up while manufacturing jobs are down. Everything that ought to be up is down. Everything that ought to be down is up. And yet, last year, there were $2.2 trillion spent on global military expenditures. So when you see a military conflict, whether it's in the Sudan, whether it's in Ukraine, whether it's in Yemen, whether it's anywhere in the world, whether it's in Iraq, whether it's in Libya, whether it's in Afghanistan, ask yourself, who is getting rich today? Chances are it's probably not you. And you might have seen actually a great piece of journalism on 60 Minutes last week about the incredible price gouging that goes on by military contractors. I mean, exponential price gouging, and that's just what they were able to find out. Can you imagine what your money, where your money and your tax dollars are going in places that we don't even know what the level of price gouging is? This is not unfortunate. This is not sad. This is a genuine criminal tragedy. And the thing that's so sad is that there are so few people willing to stand up and say so. And that's why I really admire all of you, everyone that came out here on a holiday weekend to say so. And I'll just end with this. I can't help but think about a couple of wise guys from the past who knew a thing or two about peace. Two communist hippie peaceniks who also happen to be five-star generals. First up, you've got Dwight D. Eisenhower, a man who may have been largely responsible for winning World War II, presided over a remarkable period of economic prosperity and peace. And he knew war so loud and clear that it echoed through the ages like a cannonball in a china shop. And he cautioned us about the military-industrial complex, that unholy alliance of bombs and bucks. And boy, did we not listen. It's like forgetting to floss. You know it's important, but you just keep putting it off until it's too late. But speaking of people with poor dental habits, then you've got our old pal George Washington, the OG of farewell addresses, who reminded us about the dangers of entangling alliances. Now, I'm not saying alliances are bad. I mean, who doesn't love a good buddy to have your back in times of trouble? But let's face it, getting caught up in someone else's squabbles is like getting stuck in traffic on a hot summer day. You're not going anywhere fast, and you're definitely not enjoying the ride. So, my friends, let's take a page from Ike and from the original George W.'s playbook and put the brakes on this endless cycle of war and chaos. Let's focus on healing our nation and making America healthy again, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually too. Do not get fooled the next bit of propaganda that you are spoon-fed. You remember when they were trying to get everybody revved up to go to war in Iraq, they were telling us every lie in the book. They were saying Iraq had something to do with the attack on the World Trade Center. Then a big narrative that took place was that Iraq actually had something to do with the anthrax attacks. Do you remember those anthrax attacks in 2003? How scared everybody was? People were afraid to get their mail. They were microwaving their mail because they were terrified. There were lines at the drugstore around the corner for people to buy Cipro because anybody thought they might be next. What did the government and what did the media tell you? They said, oh, this is probably Iraq. Well, it turned out, we learned 7 years later, after we were already very committed into Iraq, we learned Iraq had nothing to do with it. That anthrax attack came from right here in the United States. Created not by Saddam Hussein or some Middle Eastern tin pot dictator, came from an American. And yet they used that terror to frighten Americans into going into a frenzy for war. Don't get fooled again. Don't get frightened into a frenzy. Nuclear escalation is real. And I don't understand why this war in Ukraine keeps escalating. First it was missiles, then it was first it was defensive weapons, then it was offensive missiles, now it's F-16s. You think, what's next? And then you bring up the idea, as both Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Donald Trump have, and you bring up the idea of, well, we've got to be careful about nuclear war, and you're mocked. You're mocked as if you're some sort of kook. Ugh. How could you worry about nuclear war? Well, you've had such a good track record of being honest with us to this point. I can't imagine why we'd worry about nuclear war. The one optimistic note that I'll end with is the fact that there is people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Dennis Kucinich on the left, people like Rand Paul, Pat Buchanan, and to some extent Donald Trump on the right, willing to say, let's put the brakes on nuclear war. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and you remember that Memorial Day should be about not just remembering those who've lost their lives in the service of the country, but making sure that fewer of them do it in the future. Thank you, everybody.
What a man. Let's hear it. Let's hear it for Frank Morano. And this is why he's well known around the United States in his great, great radio broadcasts for doing what he does. And it's about peace and freedom and about the American spirit that's been stolen from us. And by the way, we just put this up this past week. A great guy, Ellis Bradley, put this up. This is a peace symbol. That's all metal. And the ring around it is an old wheel from back in the day. So we're doing everything we can to bring peace and freedom back to this country, because we need it now more than ever. This nuclear stuff isn't just a lot of BS, it's reality. Remember the stupid advertisements they were running on TV? You had this actress saying, okay, a nuclear attack just happened in New York. Don't get excited. We have 3 things for you to do. I'm not making this stuff up. This is the same kind of arrogant crap that those little crap heads stand 6 feet apart. Oh, and when you go on an airplane, you wear your mask. But when you eat and drink, you can take a mask off, because the virus knows when you're eating and drinking and sitting around all those people, it doesn't bother you. Yeah, those kind of crap heads that keep giving us war and hate, that keep selling us the worst of the worst, are now running these commercials in case a nuclear attack happens. And when you go into your house, stand in the middle of the room. Yeah, and bend over and kiss your ass goodbye. What are you talking about? Anyway, that's what's going on. So today, as Frank said, this rally is about making America healthy again. And the man that came up with that is I greatly admire, and one of the forerunners of health, fitness, and nutrition. And I do a show every other week on his radio network, Progressive Radio Network. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gary Null.
Gerald took his Valium this morning. How many people are here from the radio show, my radio show? Hands. All right. About 80% of you. Good. I'm going to talk about 2 things. 2 things that I believe we have to come to grips with now. And that is, first you show the bad news, how did we get here? But then you show the good news, how easy it is to get to a different place. I just came last night from completing what I hope will be the most important clinical study on not just slowing the aging process and reversing disease, but actually adding years to our life, which will be the first time scientifically from hard data, from DNA methylation tests taken in the arm, blood chemistry. It's over 90 days on campus for 2 weeks, just finished last night. The changes in 2 weeks were astonishing, but then we got the blood work up from the last test, and we showed one guy added 5 years to his life. But everyone, including the people that didn't do anything, they were averaged in at 2.2 years. So the reality is we added about 5 years to a person's lifespan, healthy years. Now, how's that possible when we're losing in New York City 5 years over the last 3 years of our life expectancy, and of all the developed nations, we're dead last? Yet we have more hospitals, more doctors, nurses, more drugs taken, more scientists than any other country in the world working on disease. And we're spending $4 trillion this year. And that's because we've been propagandized. The number one culprit, the number one disadvantage you've had is you've trusted the people in power or authority. You've trusted the so-called experts. Biggest mistake we could make. Because from early on in life, we believe what we're told. If there's someone who's got in a position of responsibility and power, we think, well, that person wouldn't lie to me. What's the advantage of lying? Just tell me the truth. But they don't. And yet, coming up in the car, a good friend of mine, Steve Brown, and I were discussing this, and he is the opinion that most doctors and most of medicine is there purely for profit. And I said, but they didn't start that way, Steve. They started as idealists. Most dentists, doctors, in every profession, and scientists start with an idea that they're going to take what they learn, a lot of discipline, a lot of time, and they're going to translate that into a better way of living. But they weren't taught that. And why weren't they taught that? Because way back at the beginning of the 20th century, there was one human being who caused, in the end, almost all the disease you see today. Indirectly. How did he do it? His name was John Rockefeller, Sr. And he decided, he was the wealthiest man in America, dwarfing anyone before him, including Andrew Carnegie. And he decided that there was a good use for all this petrochemicals that he was manufacturing. He was the oil business, Standard Oil of New Jersey. So he created, remember this, he alone created the entire pharmaceutical industry in the United States. But then there was a problem. What about all the medical schools, all the doctors, all the healing that was done, homeopathy, naturopathy, natural hygiene, etc.? He got a man named Flexner, and Flexner was paid to prove that all those were unscientific. And so they came up with a term, alternative. So if you were anyone teaching alternative or practicing alternative was a quack, unscientific. And therefore, with Rockefeller University and Rockefeller Foundation, they began to put massive amounts of money in every medical school. Therefore, they controlled the curriculum. They controlled what was taught. They controlled the medical paradigms. Drugs first, surgery second, radiation third. And drugs dominated. So even the best intentioned, idealistic doctors today believe that the only course, if you're an oncologist, is chemotherapy and radiation and surgery for cancer. But what if I showed you there were doctors such as Dr. Joseph Issels in Germany who had the highest independently confirmed cancer cure rate for terminal cancer, 16.6%. And he didn't use any of that. He used a combination of natural therapies. He was an orthodox surgeon, but he saw that that wasn't working. He tried something different and it worked. There were 9 other doctors around the United States, all board certified, all legitimate, and they were fine until word got out that they were not using the standard care. And then all the state medical boards went against any doctor who didn't follow the line. This is the only thing you can approach a disease with. And therefore they started arresting doctors, putting doctors in prison, not because they hurt their patients, to the contrary. In one case of a Dr. Privateer, James Privateer in California, he was doing a hard time on a chain gang when his wife came to see me in 1975. And we managed to get him out of prison because he had done nothing more than help his patients who got orthodox therapy. They got cancer, they got chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, but then their immune systems were collapsed. He rebuilt their immune systems. They all come to testify on his behalf. The judge had to tell, no, you're being charged with, did you follow scientific standards? And the answer was no, I did something else. Well, then you're guilty. And even though they reluctantly They were reluctant in convicting him. They had to convict him, and those laws are still applied today, except if you get permission from your doctor to use an alternative therapy. But we had to fight for years to stop that kind of Stalinism in medicine. Well, it still exists. Look at COVID. If you came out on the right side as an orthodox, board-certified, pro-vaccine physician and said there's a problem here, it doesn't meet any of the scientific standards, what you're telling us, it's wrong, you were criticized. Dr. Jensen lost his license, Dr. Cole, again, and all these doctors, Dr. Pierre Corey, they were all great doctors. In fact, one of the doctors, Dr. McCullough, is the most cited cardiologist, nephrologist in world history in the Library of Medicine. Professor of medicine, sits on the medical board, didn't matter. They got rid of all of them. They destroyed them. How can you destroy people who have truth on their side? By controlling the media. Therefore, we believe the media. We believe whatever they told us. Why did we believe the media? Because we are ideologically referenced to be balkanized. You're either conservative or you're liberal. Both of those are worthless terms. They shouldn't be used. Democrat and Republican shouldn't be used. The only term should be used in referencing anything in life is who has power and who doesn't. Because if you don't have power, you're the prey. And they're the predators. Just use common sense. Back in the 1970s, 2 women from Boston came to me and said, Gary, can you help us? How? Because every ad on Saturday morning television is for some form of sugar-coated cereal, and parents are allowing them to eat that stuff, and they're getting obese and diabetes. And I said, sure. Okay, we started a campaign. They were the ones who brought it forward, and other doctors joined, but only a tiny amount of doctors. And this gets to another issue. If you have more or less 900,000 doctors, and they're all exposed to the same orthodox literature, they read the New England Journal of Medicine, or if they have time, and they practice what that journal says is good science. But then Dr. Angell, 22 years head of the New England Journal of Medicine, is the editor-in-chief, now professor, I believe, at Harvard. She wrote a book on it. She said over 67% of the studies in peer-reviewed journals cannot be replicated. Well, the whole basis of good science is replication. If I say I can do something, like my scientific study I just finished, and this is the 6th in a row, I should be able to hand you that protocol, you follow the protocol, and come up with the same or similar results. But you can't. Therefore, well, how's this happening? How are peer-reviewed journals publishing bad science? How are doctors then practicing bad medicine? No doctor wakes up in the morning and wants to give you a chemotherapy where the likelihood of you dying from the chemotherapy or the radiation, even in rebound, is so high, they don't want to hurt you. But the outcome is going to be they're going to hurt you. In fact, the #1 cause of death for years is iatrogenesis, or doctor or medically induced disease. The AMA says it's #3, and as my friend Steve said coming up, yeah, they think, great, we're #3, we're way down the list. We're only killing 600,000 Americans a year. Mind you, 600,000 minimum and up to a 900,000 maximum are dying because of medical mistakes, and yet they won't change a single one of those mistakes. There's no meeting anywhere in the world to say, you know, we're screwing up. We've got all the money, all the technology, all the science. Why are we killing so many patients? And not a single comment in a single magazine or newspaper or journalist will have the courage to say, because we're following the wrong paradigm. Well, who controls the paradigm? The big money makers, the people who want to make money no matter what the consequence. And it's never someone from the government. It's never someone from industry that comes forward, with the exception of whistleblowers, and says, these guys are committing crimes against humanity. And even when they're caught with Vioxx killing a minimum of 60,000 Americans, a maximum of 500,000, they're given a fine, but all their profit of over $8 billion from $12 billion they made, they were allowed to keep, and the stock went up in the company the next day. How is it that you can kill 60,000 Americans and get a raise, get a bonus? How is that possible? Because you control science. Science is for sale. The media is captured. Industry is captured. Everything is captured, and then you get in line thinking, I'll take my ticket to get my vaccine. I'll take my ticket so that my kid can watch those sugar-coated cereal snacks, can eat like everything you see. You don't see a normal meal. You never see a healthy meal. You've never seen an ad for sprout salad, right? I'd like to see an ad for sprout salad once. And then I'd like to see a truth in advertising. So you come out and you say, looky here, we're giving you glazed donuts, true story, you've all seen this, with fried chicken. The buns are glazed donuts. Everything is pro-inflammatory, which is the primary cause of all disease, inflammation. So what if, and then they have the hamburger. We don't need to give you a hamburger, we give you a hamburger with sausage. Well, isn't that meat? Yeah, but it's different type. No, one comes from beef, one comes from pork, but they're both going to be heterocyclamines causing cancer. Don't talk about that. So what if we had on a split page saying, this bun causes cancer. Anytime anything goes brown, French fries, potato chips, pretzels, it's acrylamides causing disease. This meat, how much meat do you need? You only need 1 forkful of meat to meet your daily requirements of protein. 1 forkful. So go into a restaurant and say, give me that 1 forkful of meat. No. Someone would tear down the restaurant if they gave you 1 forkful. No, they give you enough meat for 6 days. Well, you can't store it, so it goes into your body and causes disease. So the cause of disease is easy. Don't be lied to. It is eating more than what your body can handle, not engaging in fasting, not juicing, drinking carbonated beverages and caffeine and alcohol, and then causing so much inflammation from the sugar you're eating, which suppresses your immune system, to the fried foods, the congestion in your intestine, causing colorectal cancer and other itises. So your body is always on inflammation status. And nothing is healthy that you put into the 93% of Americans' diets. Nothing. How could they do that? How could you eat yourself to death? Because you're not eating because of health. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, I want my French fries, and I want a lot of them, I want a lot of salt on there, and I don't care about my blood pressure, don't care about my edema, don't care about my diabetic neuropathy, don't care about my diabetes, don't care about my fasting blood sugar. I care about how I feel after I eat it. And look at all the other people. They're smiling and eating and stuffing themselves, and when we get really morbidly obese, we'll simply say, we love our fat. We love it. Parade around naked. Show that big ass in the mirror. Well, the Kardashian didn't it, right? She became famous for having a big ass. Oh, in a porno film that she made. I mean, this is America, right? We make someone a billionaire and then pride ourselves and match her ass. Mine's not big enough. Think of that. Am I lying? Is this not the case? Or maybe she's writing a book like Socrates. Just be honest. If you're honest, you're always allowing the truth to enlighten you, to expand your consciousness. If we just told the truth about everything, we'd be totally healthy as a nation. Our kids wouldn't have diabetes. We wouldn't have more obesity per population than any country in the world. We wouldn't be believing our doctor to tell us about health. Pathology is their profession. Know your disease, but then know all the ways of treating it, not just one limited way. Now, you've heard Utrice Sleet on my radio show, right? About all the diseases she had, that all of our oncologists and doctors and nephrologists couldn't help. Well, she's free of disease today. Do you think I get a single call from a single doctor? Never. 8 diseases. 8. Stage 4 lung cancer, diabetic neuropathy, high blood pressure, tachycardia, 277 pounds. As of this morning, we were talking to her on the way up here. And I put her on speakerphone for Dr. Elmira Gadol, America's #1 holistic dentist, is here. She brought us up. Any of you been to Elmira? She's going to give you a refund today for all those cavities. In any case, I had her, and I said, Elmira, did any of your oncologists and cardiologists and internists, did any of them suggest that maybe you could deal with all these diseases by a healthy diet? Not one. Just medicines. Well, without medicines, she's okay now, and no one's going to pay attention to that. And all the other people who've done a healthy lifestyle, no one's going to pay attention. They just care about the medicine, and the people that own the hospitals and own the doctor's offices care about the profit. So that's why you're paying an astronomical amount. The #1 cause of bankruptcy this year, medical bills. What does that tell us when we're supposed to be a compassionate nation, people who care about one another? Let me tell you how much of a problem we have. How many people in here couldn't write a check for $2,000? Okay. Well, over 100 million Americans couldn't. All right? Now, if you can't write a check to pay your bills and you're living off your credit cards and you miss a payment or you can't make a full payment, suddenly the government shows what they think of you. Your interest rates go up. So you're poor enough as it is, but make it real hard. Thank you. Make it even harder to pay your bills. Profit off pain, profit off suffering, profit off poverty. We don't have a war on poverty. We have a profit on poverty. Otherwise, we would do the following. And this brings me to something else. So being healthy is simple. Fast between dinner and breakfast. Don't put anything in your body that causes inflammation. Put healthy grains, nuts, and seeds, and legumes, and beans, and juices, and salads galore, and starchy vegetables, what you could buy at the farmer's market, and wherever possible, organic and locally grown. Exercise, 10,000 steps a day minimum. And think positive thoughts. Get out of this sense of helplessness, that somehow they have the power. Power is an illusion. The moment an expose occurs, the moment a whistleblower comes forward, the moment the truth comes out, and suddenly we've been lied to about everything, then suddenly that person loses their power because we no longer give them our power. Remember, nobody has power until you give it to them. So take back your power from everyone in authority. I don't kiss anyone's ass. I put no one before me when it comes to what I know and what I don't know, and I don't want someone to tell me what I should know, because what I should know may not be good for me, but good for them. Because look at all the people who profit off our pain, profit off our disease, profit off our abandoned children. What have they done? I don't care, Democrat or Republican, they're all assholes. Now, I've got something for Robert Kennedy here, and Dennis Kucinich, his campaign manager. I'm going to share something with you now. This is just something I thought you and I could share together. Maybe they might find something of value in it, but if they don't, they're not getting my vote. If they do, they could get my vote. But they got to be sincere, because every politician kisses your baby, eats your crappy donuts, says, I'm going to be back, and you never see him again, right? So here's what I believe we need to stop the disease in America, because the disease is not simply a pathology. That's the end stage of a process. You don't get cancer overnight. You don't have a heart attack from eating one hamburger. You don't get cirrhosis of the liver by drinking one glass of alcohol. You don't get upset and die because of one incident. It's the constant progression. And how do we know to keep doing bad things? Because the media convinces us through advertising, and all those stupid ass actors who don't know anything about anything come out there and say, take your shot. Why don't you take my shot, asshole? They already hate me, so they can't hate me. I don't care what they think. Someone's got to stand up and speak truth to power. And not politicians, because I know they're pathological. Here's some things, and you tell me whether or not you think this would make America healthy again, because we have to have a healthy attitude. Stop allowing them to balkanize us by race, by identity politics, by wokeism, by class. When was the last time you found an average working person invited to sit on a committee at the White House? Never. You find these jerks who have no experience, zero. There's not a single person who's trained to be president. They're selected to be president, and the people who know what they want when you become president pull in all their sycophants, technocrats from industry to run the government. And none of them have a single whit of humanity, because they're not coming from a spiritual place. They're not coming from humanity. They're not coming from decency and ethics and morality. They don't care about you. They care about themselves. Just look at this shift in power. So stop telling them it's about women versus men. There's never a war on men and women. It's a war from power to men and women. You can only condition a person the wrong way if a person chooses to be conditioned the wrong way. Because what also is happening in that person is all of us are born with one gift that you cannot deny. That's intuition. And as long as you're willing to use your intuition, something is going to tell you, validate before you trust. And we don't. And then how many times we made the wrong decisions, wake up one day and say, damn, I shouldn't have done that. I went through all those red lights in life. That was not the right relationship for me. That was not the right political party to support. That was not the right way to feed my kids or myself. That was not the right television program, internet to watch. We got to pull ourselves away from all these things that addict us. We're a nation of addicts. And what's the number one addiction? Comfort. If you can't get out of your comfort zone, you're never going to change. Get out of your damn comfort zones. Get off your ass and do something. Don't talk it, walk it. I want to see people say, I'm ready to pull off. Saying no to Wikipedia. Saying no to NBC, ABC, Rachel Maddow. Saying no to these people who are all a part of the military-industrial complex, the pharmaceutical complex, the ideological complex, the financial complex, the agriculture complex, because none of them appreciate the fact that nothing in their life, I don't care if you're the richest man in the world, if you're Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, that I've yet to see any of those dancing clowns say, thank you for growing our food. Thank you for making that shirt, those shoes, those eyeglasses. Thank you for making these buildings, putting this mortar together, the glass. Everything in your life comes from the average person. There's nothing in your life that doesn't come from a hardworking person that gets no credit for everything, is the first to be demeaned, and is a deplorable according to Hillary Clinton. Like she's a model of virtue? Oh, yeah, yeah. I shouldn't say anything about Hillary because I want to live another day. Just joking. So, look, I'm not afraid of the truth. I'm terrified of the lie. Because the truth has good consequences. You know what you're dealing with and you have some options. You have some freedoms to make a choice. The lie, you don't. We've been lied to at every issue of life by everyone. So if Robert Kennedy is going to get your vote and my vote, let him do this. On day one, let him announce that if he's elected, he will pardon every whistleblower for the last 50 years. And Dennis, this isn't a goddamn talking point, buddy. This is reality. All right? I've had enough bullshit from politicians promising anything and delivering nothing. So tell the truth. Well, good luck with that. Number two, in the closest park to the Justice Department, build a monument of every whistleblower, and then so we have a whistleblowers park to show who the real heroes in America are, and they're not in the government. Then giving back every whistleblower all the money they lost through litigation and lost wages to make them whole. And then they should go into every curriculum about the true heroes are the ones who see corruption, identify corruption, and risk their life and everything else to expose that. And the government says, okay, rewards those who are corrupt and puts the whistleblower in prison. What kind of nation is that?
A tyrannical one.
I mean, how does the Democratic Party sleep at night knowing that heroes have now become the villain? Yeah. Next, let's have a Marshall Plan to rebuild all of the cities in America, every ghetto in America, bring down the military-industrial complex of what is needed, and that would leave us about $500 billion, and put that into bringing factories and work at a living wage, not a minimum wage, to every community in the United States. We have the money to do it. We have the skill to do it. And boy, we could use a lot of rebuilding in every city. And that would bring people back together, bring families back together, get people out of poverty. And we have refused to do it. Next, no one should have to go to a hospital like my friend, have a stomach ache, sits there for 3 hours in the emergency room. They give him a simple saline solution, salt water, which costs about $1 to make, and charge him $10,000. True story. No one should be charged tens of thousands of dollars for a simple procedure. But until you have universal health care, that's going to happen. Universal health care for everyone. And then fire all of the insurance company middle management people. Get them the hell out of our lives. They don't help a single person live. Then never again bail out any major bank. Let them fail. Now think of it. It's just truth and common sense. We had all the banks fail in 2008. We bailed out the banks who made the mistakes by liar's loans, and we didn't help a single person. Obama and the Senate and House could have together had a resolution to put a moratorium on home foreclosures. They could have kept every one of 25 million Americans in their home and kept 7 million homes from being foreclosed on. They chose not to help any of the people who were victimized. They helped the people who perpetrated that. Never allow that to happen again. Put a moratorium on that. Also, make enough money in this country, take it away from bureaucracies. Half of our governments, state, local, and federal, could be brought down to a level and put that into feeding programs so we don't have 16 million hungry children. It's a shame when 16 million children go hungry and we're feeding Ukraine into their kleptocracy $115 billion. How's that legitimate? How's it legitimate that we have hundreds of thousands of homeless vets? Where were those politicians when it came time to put them into war and say how heroic was, and now they've got no legs, they got no arm, and it takes a private foundation to embarrass the government, but this government says, no, if you get hurt, and we're gonna take care of you. And they don't. The whole system's corrupt top to bottom. Deconstruct the FBI in its entirety. Now I realize that's going to be embarrassing for the first 3 Roosevelt FBI agents and undercover. Pricks, we see you. I could tell by your haircut and your socks. And rebuild the police system that we need that actually goes after criminals, including white-collar criminals, corporate criminals, and stop this idea of harassing innocent people who show up at school board meetings because they don't want their 4-year-old taught pornography. And shame on the Democrats in power who said that was okay. It's not okay.
What
Maybe
about the Republicans? Why don't you ever call them out? Why don't you call out Fox News?
Oh, I call Fox. First of all, I don't call, and you've never really heard me call the top Republican, that's Trump, out because I refuse to insult 8-year-old autistic children. If you've listened to my show, then you have heard me say, I don't challenge Republicans because what is so evidently corrupt in them is beyond imagination. So I don't trust Republicans or Democrats. Didn't you hear what I said, sir? I don't trust either. I don't vote for either. I voted for Ralph Nader, and Ralph Nader, and Ralph Nader, and Jill Stein, and Rocky Anderson. So when I say someone's corrupt and they're all corrupt, I'm not leaving anyone out. I'm not leaving the political process out. Also, next, ban all corporate and PAC money from elections. Don't allow any rich person. Don't allow George Soros or any of the other billionaires, left or right, control any election ever again. Because we don't have one citizen, one vote. We have whoever's got the most money wins. So what if we had a lottery? So a plumber, a police officer, a store clerk could run for an office. That's what we should be doing. So we bring it back, the power to the people. And by the way, don't think you're not qualified, because not a single person in any office of the government is qualified. If they were, we wouldn't have a $32 trillion debt, just the federal level, or be $221 trillion total in debt. And if these corporate geniuses are so smart, why do they have $25 trillion in debt? What happens when one bank fails and they got $100 trillion in derivatives? We should outlaw derivatives. We should outlaw credit default swap. We should outlaw shorting and naked shorts. We should outlaw manipulating trading in any commodity essential to life. We shouldn't have someone that doesn't own a farm, never buys a seed, never handles a plow, control the farmer's life. No more subsidies to big agriculture. No more subsidies to Monsanto. And when a corporation is found to have intentionally, any corporation, to have known the truth about a product they give us and then hid that, those people should all be going to jail. I'm talking about the entire board of directors, the officers, the scientists. Everyone who participated or knew there was a crime being committed should be in prison for the rest of their life. Fauci. Oh, God. Now, a few more things I want to think that we should do. I want to reverse Trump's opening with the Republicans of public lands to private interests and implement a moratorium on private exploration of national parks, fossil fuels, mining, and lumber. No more. Also, I want to create a national food program to ensure that every community is able to feed its hungry. I want to create a moratorium on the Federal Reserve for giving no interest loans to banks and corporations. I want every bank to have no more than 5 times loan out to their reserve currencies. I want to eliminate 100% payday loans and credit card interest rates and all late fees above 18%. No interest rate should be more than 2% because that's a 200% profit that the companies are making when they got the money for nothing. I want every medication that is used in America, the corporations that made it good, let them have a 300% profit. Right now, some of those drugs, the cost of a generic supply for 30 days versus what they profit as is 3 to 5 to 10 to 15,000% interest. Take the profit, excess profit, out of all medications. Do not allow any more subsidies to any fossil fuel industry. And start the exploration of natural. How do we save America, our economy? Because it's going to collapse. It already has been exceeded 5 weeks ago by Russia. Wait till the BRICS nations, which now have all these other countries coming on to Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, now Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Argentina, all these, Mexico, all these countries are joining BRICS. So within, I believe, the next 12 months or a little longer, their gross domestic product will exceed the United States. The day you read the United States no longer is the leader with its currency, watch how that tips everything attached to cash go down. Also, do not accept a cashless society. Take your money out of their banks. Tear up their credit cards. Go to credit unions, but check the credit union, making sure that you check to see what is your total deposits, what are your loans, what is your reserve currency. And if they say, oh, we're good, we have $1 billion in reserve currency, and we have $1 billion in current deposits, but we have $5 billion in outstanding credit. That's not good. Find those that are solvent and put your money there. Put it in gold, silver, and things you're going to need for the future, because when the dollar drops, everything attached to the dollar, meaning the cost of everything, is going to go up exponentially. And people are exploiting this. Remember, the company may say, well, we've got to raise our profit margins or we can't exceed, we'll go out of business. Who owns the companies? Find out who actually owns the majority of shares in a company, and that's who's controlling that company's policies. So let's start decentralizing power. Bring it back to the states. And move to those states that are not draconian and not aligned with the special interest. Unfortunately, New York is not one of those states. We're becoming more and more draconian. We have such a perversion of freedom in this country and here. But Florida, Texas, South Dakota, there are about 20 states where they're refusing to mandate, and they're refusing to go to a strictly currency like Europe. Right now, the European Union is all digital currency. You can only go up to $1,000, but beyond that $1,000, you could go to jail. You don't want to live in that kind of environment, no matter what they tell you. And let's have a special panel of people like John Whitehead, one of the three, in my opinion, one of the 3 finest constitutional lawyers. Danny Sheehan's right up there also. And one other person, you see him on television sometime? Have you, who? No. He's not a lawyer, huh? Huh? No. Oh, you missed George Washington University professor? Come on. Jonathan Turley. Because you got difference of opinion, but these are great minds that tell the truth. You should have a panel to go through all federal laws and start writing off the laws we don't need. We have 90% of our laws we don't need. A lawmaker is not just to go in there and pass laws based upon who gives them money. I'll give you one example before I finish up here. There was a medical doctor and 8 of his colleagues who were all gastroenterologists, and they were in England. They were examining some autistic children, small number, 12 children, and they all had something in common. They had really a messed up gut. They were having chronic diarrhea, and so they said that this may have been caused by a vaccine, but we have to do more research on it, the M in MMR vaccine. For that, they were excoriated, and 2 of them lost their license. One fought that and got the license back in, the other did not. And I actually did a 7-hour special on his case and debated the guy who put him in jail. Or not did put him in jail, caused him to lose his license. In any case, jump ahead. So who was out there fighting these doctors and their quacks and their nut jobs? CNN. Well, guess what? There was a Dr. Brian Hooker whose son developed autism spectrum disorder after getting the vaccines. He was trying to, under Freedom of Information Act, get information to find out how this happened, what happened. And he's a professor out at University in California with a background in science. Lo and behold, one of those things that never happened but did. One of the people in that study, Dr. William Thompson, contacted him. They started a conversation back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then Thompson said something that just startled him. He said, we knew that there would be a very high incidence. How high? 325% increase in autism spectrum disorder in African-American young children 36 months and younger. What? Then he started recording the phone calls. And he said, what happened? Well, we got together all the material and we put it in trash bags to destroy it. So this never happened. But it did happen. It happened. And how many African-American young boys now have autism in the last almost 18 years since that was discovered? Hundreds of thousands. So I sent this information to Congress. Nobody did anything. The media wouldn't touch it. One legislator named Posey from Florida wanted to do something about this. No one in Congress would co-sponsor a committee hearing. That's how powerful it is, because you have to have the Speaker of the House or the head of the Senate agree that a committee is going to have, bring people in and put them under oath. And if they say no, it doesn't happen. So we ask, what happened? Well, lobbyists happen. Who do lobbyists represent? You? No. They represent special interest. So now we have the words, in his own words, we have the information, but still nothing is happening. That shows you, even when the Republicans took back the House, the legislators took back the Republicans. Most, not all. Thank goodness we have a few honest Democrats and a few honest Republicans, but the majority are still controlled, because the moment that hearing happens, and William Thompson, who is a registered whistleblower, when he testifies that, yes, we knew the MMR vaccine caused autism and we hid it. We engaged in obstruction of justice. We destroyed the files. That's end of story when it comes to those people sponsoring the MMR vaccine who've defended it. And now it shows a big mirror up to those 100,000 doctors. Do your homework. Where's the where's American Academy of Pediatrics get its money? Where's the American Academy of Obstetrics and Gynecology get its money? Follow the money trail. All right? If you follow the money trail, you come back to the same corporate interests and the same political interests, and we've got to say no more to that. Don't use their credit cards. Don't watch their television. Don't read the New York Times. You can use the New York Times if you live in New York City to take it out to pick up the poop from the dogs. But otherwise, stop trusting people you've trusted, because that's why you're sick. That's why America's sick, and that's how we're going to take back our health. Thank you all very much.
We are to have Mr. Gary Null here. And again, he was the inspiration for Make America Healthy Again. Make America healthy again, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and I guess patriotically.
Sexually.
Sexually, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Can't help it. It's
National treasure.
By the way, as a gift to all of you, we brought up 2 of my multi-award winning Medicated intravenous vitamin drips, we were able to take 1,200 people out of full-blown AIDS back to a healthy but HIV positive. 18 of them went on advanced protocol. We eliminated all the AIDS. We cured AIDS, and not a single person recognized that within science or medicine. That documenting proves it. I'll see you over, or any of you coming to the screening of my new film?
Up at the Tinker Street, the Tinker Street Theater in Woodstock. It starts what, 6 o'clock, right?
6 o'clock.
Yep. And this is you've got to be there. You're giving out also.
Yeah, different film.
Yep. So this is a film of a lifetime. You're not going to want to miss. It's free. So just go up there. 6 o'clock. What?
Where's John Tower?
Yeah, right there.
John,
Right over there, we'll do it, Gary.
if you want the free film, it'll be right over there.
Free films.
Free documentary. I want you to see the truth that will never get on the media. All right? And I'm premiering my new film, which excoriates the mental health field altogether throughout its entire history, called Manufacturing Madness. That'll be at 6 o'clock. All right? Thank you all for coming.
And remember, you can get these great T-shirts. And here they are. Hey, politicians, who the F are you to tell me what to do? And also, do what you can to support Occupy Peace. You can see what we're doing here to make the best we can. And we need your help. And as Gary just said about the media, you ready? Richard Nixon, a murderous little piece of garbage scum crap. The American people don't believe anything until they see it on television. You ready for this? A new poll just came out. A plurality of voters get their news from TV, 43%. So that's why we're putting out the Trends Journal to give you the best we can in any way we can. So there's another great quote. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. Think of the press as a great keyboard on which the government can play. Joseph Goebbels, Prime Minister of Propaganda for the Nazis. No, it's little Donnie Lemon. No, let's see. It's one little Jake Tapper. It's one of these little boys and girls, arrogant little prostitutes, media whores that get paid to put out by their corporate pimps and their government whoremasters. And that's why you want to go to PRN and listen to Gary Null. And in wrapping all of this up at a very high note, I was the first person, and you can look at the videos, to say that the only way this government could change is to bring somebody in that's for peace, justice, and the American way. Think about it. Think about if your father was assassinated. What kind of person would you be? Think about if your uncle, the President of the United States, was assassinated. What kind of person would you be? The person would be John F. Kennedy Jr., a man that came out against the COVID war, a man that preaches freedom, peace, and justice, and a man whose national campaign manager is here. A man that I admired as I was learning about life and becoming smarter. A man that protested every one of America's murderous wars in opposition to just about everybody else. And he's here today to talk about RFK Jr. and how we could make America the country that we all love, and that's why all of you are here today. Ladies and gentlemen, Congressman Dennis Kucinich.
Hello, Kingston. Hello, Kingston. Can you hear me back there? Can you hear me? Let me see your thumbs up. Okay, great. Gerald, thank you for making this possible. Gary, thank you for all of the effort you made in getting this message out on your radio show. Let's hear it for Gerald and for Gary and for everyone who was involved in bringing us together. It takes a lot of work to do that. And if any of you are sitting out in the sun for too long, make sure you get some water. I don't want to hear reports that people passed out during his speech. A few things I just want to clear up right away. First of all, the turnout here is terrific, and I want to thank all of you who are here. We've created a number that you can text to in order for you, if you're interested now in helping, I'm going to give you the number, and I'll give you the number afterwards after you hear what I have to say. But the number that I'd like you to text to, and this is for Kingston only, is 202-664-3406. 202-664-3406. Text to that number if you want to get involved in the Kennedy campaign. Now, I'm going to talk about it now in a minute. Again, 202-664-3406. So, Gerald and I, before I came in here and I was at the Mohican, we were talking about the campaign. And he wanted me to make sure that I mentioned two things to you. So I'm going to do that before I make my presentation, because this is Gerald's show that he put together with Gary. Many of you will remember that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has had a 40-year career as an environmental attorney. Kennedy has led the way in getting chemicals out of foods, toxins out of the water. He most recently was responsible, part of a team of attorneys who successfully sued Monsanto and their corporate hierarchs. He's somebody who is dedicated to clean air, to clean water. He has been known, some of you know him, as the hero of the Hudson, because he's the one who led the effort to clean up the Hudson. And it was his singular effort on his part, using his knowledge as an environmental attorney. Now, there was a news report, I don't know, 8 years ago, where somebody interviewed him, and he was asked about the Koch brothers and about their position with respect to some of the responsibilities they had for the environment. And some people had interpreted that anybody who, it was interpreted stupidly as anybody who didn't agree with him on climate matters was going to go to jail. You know, I shouldn't have to point this out, but that's not a fact. Robert F. Kennedy is first and foremost an environmental attorney. The judicial system decides how to dispense with people who are polluters, and he's never said that he's going to execute people, put them in jail. There's a lot of crazy talk that goes out in the campaign. I've been in a lot of campaigns. I know about it. The one thing that I want you to keep in mind, and you know, I'm here to really talk about peace and a vision of the America that can be, but what we have found is this, that that carbon that's up there, and there's a lot of it. I worked in Congress on trying to limit atmospheric carbon concentrations. We're way past what I was hoping for 10 years ago. One of the things we're talking about in this campaign is bringing the carbon down through regenerative agriculture. Put the carbon back where it needs to be, in the soil. Improve the soil microbiome, right? This is the path that we need to take nationally, and we need a leader to make that happen, and that's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So I just wanted to, Gerald, you asked me to cover that. I out of respect for you, I did. Now what I'd like to do, some of you may want to chime in at some point, that's fine, but I'm going to keep going. I want to, we're on the Memorial Day weekend, and 2 and 3 generations ago, many of us have had people in our families who either served and came home, and some who didn't. And this is the day that's dedicated for remembering those who served the country and who gave their lives for the country. That's a solemn matter. My father fought in World War II. He had his knee shot out at a place called Bougainville in the Solomon Islands. And of course, it affected his life. A lot of people who go into combat, if they come home, their lives are affected and the family's lives are affected forever. But today we remember everybody who served and especially those who had not come back. And I'm going to ask just for a moment of silence and respect on this Memorial Day for all those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country and for those who gave everything they had in their last measure of devotion to the United States of America. So I would ask you to join me right now in that moment of silence. Thank you very much. We're at a critical moment in the history of this country and in the history of the world. All of us who are in my generation are familiar with the Cuban Missile Crisis and how for a few days in October in 1962, the fate of the world hung in the balance. And it was only because we had a president with a steady hand and nerves of steel who had the ability to reach out to the Russian leader, Nikita Khrushchev, in a mutual recognition of what it meant if the countries moved forward and plunged into nuclear war. John F. Kennedy understood that the fruits of that kind of victory would be, as he called it, a mouthful of ashes. Here we are in 2023, and every day right now, there's a silent Cuban Missile Crisis going on. Every day, the people in the White House are ratcheting up tensions as though they're unaware of where this could lead. Every day, you have people running the machinery of government in the United States who are whistling through the graveyards of history. It was more than astonishing that our president, President Biden, who I've known for 50 years, that he would be at the cenotaph in Hiroshima, which was built to honor the memories of those who perished in the attack, the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, and of course we know about Nagasaki, where those bombs were dropped. And yet that the same meeting of the G7 that took place, where all those leaders were arrayed on a stage, and they're paying solemn tribute to those who perished in an atomic attack, which our nation pursued. And at that very moment, policies were being pursued that would ratchet up the potential for conflict with a nuclear power that has more weapons than we do. We're acting as though there are no consequences. I object to the invasion of Ukraine. I object to that. But two wrongs don't make a right. And the United States has been on a policy of confrontation with Russia. It's been a geopolitical game, and it's also been a game that deals with energy resources. We all know this. But the world has changed. There is no longer a unipolar moment. We're not one country above all countries. We're one country among all nations, certainly in a position to take a leadership position. But every nation has the right to its sovereignty. Every country has the right where people have a right to be able to survive. Every one of us has that same right as a human being. We no longer have the right or the responsibility to rule the world. We have to recognize that there are many different centers of power in the world. There's power for all. We have to respect national sovereignty. This is America. We have to be better than we are right now. We can no longer say it's my way or the highway. That's not the America that can lead the way towards peace. I led the effort against the war in Iraq. It wasn't easy because it wasn't easy. I'm going to explain to you why, and some of you will remember this. Remember in 2002, when a determination had been made to go to war, and they laid out all the causes of war, and I said, wait a minute. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Iraq had nothing to do with al-Qaeda's role in 9/11. Iraq didn't have the intention, the capability of attacking the United States. Iraq, thank you. And Iraq, there was no proof they had any weapons of mass destruction, that they were getting ready to attack the United States. I wrote that in a memo. I distributed it to every member of the United States Congress. At least 200 of them, I put it in their hands personally. We organized 125 people who voted against the war. But we still went to war. That war was based on a lie. We were responsible, our government was responsible for killing about 1 million innocent Iraqis as a result of this. And that's the truth. And we should have never gone into Iraq. We should have never attacked that country. It cost us $8 trillion. You want to know where the national debt's going? You take that as a big part of it. So I'm not here as somebody who's a theoretician. I have been in the arena. I understand totally what's going on. I know about wars that are waged for energy. I know about wars that are waged in power games. I know about wars that are waged for totally the wrong reason. I know about wars that waste life. I know about wars that waste our country's resources. I know about wars. And I'm here to tell you that if you elect Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the next president of the United States, all that stops. No more wars, no more trying to impose the will of America on other countries, developing our energy resources to make sure we meet our needs, agricultural practices that bring the carbon down, moving ahead where the environment will protect the water, will protect the land, taking all those companies that control the agencies, whether it's the FDA, the EPA, the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all that corporate control is thrown out of Washington. We bring a president who can give the people back their government. And if you want your government back, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the only person who can do that. Now look, I've run for president twice and had a lot of support in this area, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate it very much. But I see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the one person who could go inside the Democratic Party and turn the equation. Why? He's a Kennedy Democrat. I'm a Kennedy Democrat. A lot of Kennedy Democrats moved away from the party because they said they don't represent us anymore. They're talking about things that are not related to the practical aspirations of the American people. We're concerned about jobs, about wages, about health care, about security, Social Security, about making sure that people can have a decent life and a roof over their heads, safe neighborhoods. That's the classic Democratic approach that has won us election after election. We've gotten away from it. The Kennedy Democrats are centrist. And today, that's my journey. That's where I am. I didn't, the party changed around me, and a lot of you feel the same way. We can bring it back to the center with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. But the policies have to be changed. We have to stop these wars. We need right now to be engaging with Russia and China to stop the escalation of conflict, because all the policies now are aimed at trying to make the administration look tough. At whose expense? Where are we going? I'm telling you that one false move, everything that we have in life, every journey that you've taken that's brought you to this moment could suddenly be cut off. Don't be so sure it can't happen. It just takes somebody making a mistake, saying the wrong thing, pushing a button, starting a war, and then look, today the destructive power is thousands of times what it was at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Thousands of times. The world is at risk today. I'm here with a sense of urgency, not out of fear, but out of an excitement of the country that can be. I want you to think of the America that can be. This is what we're all dedicated to. We cannot come out of fear. Fear paralyzes us. Fear incapacitates us. Fear causes us to make worse the better reason. Fear directs us away from our own interests. And those who are running things right now, they want to do that. They want to censor us. They want to have the government working with big tech. And they're creating something that doesn't resemble remotely anything that I believe in as a democratic system, and I don't think anything you believe in. It's something that is a totalitarian approach. And if we don't get somebody in that White House who said, this ends, we're going to reclaim what it means to be free in America. We're going to reclaim what liberty, the essence of liberty means. We're going to reclaim truth. We're going to stop this media approach that tries to tell us this is the only way we can think anymore. This is our time to reclaim our country, and I'm here to ask you to join with me in making Robert F. Kennedy Jr. the next President of the United States. So the number to text to, 202-664-3406, 202-664-3406. Say it one more time, 202-664-3406. We want people to help with canvassing, because we're going to canvass every community up and down the Hudson. We want people to help us put up signs. We want people to hold meetings for us. We want people to help us organize rallies, and I'll make every effort to get Mr. Kennedy here in the closing months of the campaign. We want people to be part of this campaign. This campaign, for us, isn't about, control by anyone. It's about you, the people, and your right to reclaim your government. So I'm going to, there's a few people here with questions, have their hands raised. I'll answer a few questions, but I'm going to do another thing. I'm going to come here, I'll stay here as long as I can, Gerald, and meet with you individually and answer any questions that you have. But right now, we got a few people, questions. Go ahead.
What's Bobby's Second Amendment position? Alex Newman of Liberty Sentinel says that these migrants coming in, they're being placed to invade us internally. We need self-defense. What is Bobby's Second Amendment position?
This question is the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court has pretty much, decided that there is such a thing as a right to bear arms, and it's an individual right. This is their decision. We have the gun issue is a part of a broader debate, and I want to share with you how we look at this. First of all, I want to thank the Kingston police who are off duty, who are here, because they're making sure that let's thank the Kingston police. One of the rights that we've lost in recent years is the right to be free of fear in public places. Every one of you knows what I'm talking about. Today we think about, we go to church, shopping, you go to a theater, anywhere, and all of a sudden we're concerned that somebody could pull out a weapon. We never used to have to worry about that, but now it's a legitimate concern. We have to look at how do we look at the deeper issues in this country, some of which are mental health, to deal with it. There is not a call right now. There's no way in this atmosphere of fear that people are going to give up their guns. It's not going to happen. So let's get real about that. I have my own opinions on it. I'll be right with you. But, at this point, Mr. Kennedy says, look, it's the Second Amendment, and the Supreme Court has decided we want to create a culture where there's peace, city by city, where the cities are really in trouble right now. I was mayor of Cleveland. I've seen what's happening in cities across the country. But the deeper issue is how do we control the impulse towards violence in our society? It's a much longer discussion, and certainly something that we have to continue to talk about. Next question. Go ahead. Come closer so I can hear you, okay?
I'm going to vote for Mr. Kennedy. I'm going to campaign for Mr. Kennedy. If he doesn't get the primary, will he go independent and not get thrown under the bus like Bernie?
Well, the question is, if you hadn't heard it, would Mr. Kennedy run as an independent if he doesn't get the nomination? Our focus right now is on the nomination, and let me tell you why. A number of national polls, the campaign's a month old, and in less than a month, national polls have had him at 20%, which is almost unprecedented for a Democratic candidate coming to challenge a Republican incumbent or a Democrat incumbent. So, you know, we're focused on the primary, and what we're finding in this primary is that Republicans, Libertarians, people from different parties are ready to support him in the primary. Wherever in the states they're permitted to do that. Independents are ready to do that. But we're going to take one thing at a time. And my feeling is we're developing the campaign so people will have a reason to vote in the primary. And when that happens, I think that we'll have an excellent chance to win. The campaign is now. We need your help now to build out an organization in the Hudson Valley now. And thank you to the lady, 202-664-3406. Next question, come on forward. Come on, you had a question, please? If somebody had a question, come forward.
Democrats are dead. And I'm worried that him worried about carbon will take us away from where we really need to be.
Okay, first of all, let's thank the gentleman for his question. Thank you. And thank you for the support that you have articulated for me in the past. I made a decision to, when I met with Mr. Kennedy a couple months ago and we talked about, he told me that he was thinking of running, and I immediately told him, you should do this, you could win the primary. Now, I can't tell you that I think that I could win the primary because, you know, I would have my doubts about winning a primary, frankly, for me. I've been there. You know, I've tried twice. I know what it is like to go into a Democratic primary. I understand the odds for somebody like myself. But the constituency that I have, people like that gentleman, when we combine that to the centrists on the left and the right of center, I think we can win the primary. I think we can win the election. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can be the next president. We get, you know, right now, I believe he has the support that he could beat either Mr. Trump or Mr. DeSantis. But I will tell you something. There is no other Democrat in this race who would have the chance to defeat Mr. Trump. Kennedy's the only one who could do it. He's the only Democrat who can win. Now, as far as the environmental issues that have been raised, it's still early in the campaign. We have to strike a balance. And that balance is going to be in consultation with the advice of people from around the country who work on environmental matters. I wanted to make sure at the beginning of this presentation that I straightened out some things that Gerald was concerned about, and I did. But, you know, there's a longer discussion. I appreciate your concern. This is about changing the direction of America and protecting our way of life, protecting our environment, and making sure that the preconditions of life, which involve, you know, our own existence, that they aren't overwhelmed by international politics, which put us into a third world war. Thank you. I had a question over here somewhere. Go ahead. Yeah.
Dennis, I supported both of your campaigns, and I love what you represent in American politics, and I'm 100% in support of Bobby's campaign in every way. My question is, why do you continue the lie about Al-Qaeda and 9/11? Anyone who studied this subject knows that Al-Qaeda had nothing to do with it, that it was an inside job by members of the Bush administration and Israeli
Look,
intelligence.
you know, the gentleman's question is about, thank you for your support. The gentleman's question is about 9/11. And look, I've spent quite a bit of time, and I want to acknowledge there's a lot of open questions. And the only way we're ever going to know the truth is to have a president who's dedicated to truth about everything that's happened in this country. That's why I'm for Kennedy. Next question. Yeah, the gentleman there. I'll get to everybody if I can. Come on up, okay? Talk to me.
With all due respect, I'm going to talk to you, and I want
I know, but you have a question.
Okay,
I'm
the
up
question
here.
is this.
Go ahead.
Whether we like it or not, the reset is here. They're giving us cryptocurrency. Listen to me.
Take the mic!
Central bank.
I got the mic.
Whether we like it or not, right? Okay. Listen. Okay, listen. Peace and blessings to everybody. Thanks for being here. Thank you, sir. I voted for you.
Appreciate that.
For many, many years, I've been following you.
Appreciate that.
So, but the thing is, look, whether we like it or not, okay, cryptocurrency is here. The scheme, and we're not even talking about America, right, is to get rid of the middle class, okay? They're planning, okay, when I say they, right now, what we're going to think about, right, is having, with all due respect, right, is having at least a couple of weeks worth of water, food, whether you believe in the Second Amendment or not. Think about it. We go home tonight, and the lights go out. After 2 days in the store, there's no more food and water. Your neighbor that has babies that haven't been prepared, right? After 3 days, if they know you have food, guess what? They will kill you. You know why? Because no one wants to see their baby die. So right now it's real simple. Okay, the question is this. Okay, the question is this, right? The cryptocurrency is here, right? The banks all over the world are using a cryptocurrency called XRP, XLM, right? I'm giving you information, right? The information is this, right? Okay, Congressman, okay. Okay, the question is this. What are we going to do, right, when they're already committed, right, to use cryptocurrency, okay? What can we do to protect ourselves? And I'm just telling you, XRP, 47 cents, XLM, 8 cents.
Thank you. Let's thank the gentleman for his question. Okay. Now, I'm going to take one more question, and I'm going into the audience, but I'm going to answer his question. Mr. Kennedy recently appeared, some of you are aware, that he appeared at a Bitcoin conference. And let me tell you what he said. You have to be aware that right now there are people in Washington who want to create a central bank digital currency, which would be able to track every purchase you make, where you're at. Once we get to that, government doesn't like what you're saying, they could cut it like the Chinese do. They cut off social credit. They can cut you off economically. Robert F. Kennedy's election means the end of that kind of approach for economic tyranny. No central bank digital currency. Done. Thanks for the question. One more question, and then I'm going out to meet you. A lady. Go ahead.
I don't know. Okay, so I would like to know what would be I am from Latin America, and so I would like to know what's the position of Mr. Kennedy and you about intervening in Latin America continually.
Great question.
Okay, that's a great question.
Great question.
What I want to say to my friends of Latin American background, voy a votar por Señor Kennedy. Él no se olvidar de ustedes. Gracias. So, look, all of this interventionism ends. You know, John F. Kennedy had a whole new plan for all the interventions end. John F. Kennedy had a plan that had to do with supporting economic development. But what's happened since that time, economic development has been used to subvert one government after another. And I know your concern. So you could tell the brothers and sisters that we are for non-intervention, cooperating with other nations, a new era of good feeling, an opportunity that we can all work together for economic prosperity for all, and the end of these unrelenting wars. We have a right to be able to live in freedom and peace, and this is what Occupy Peace is about. This is what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is about. Thank you, everyone. I'm coming right down there to meet with you. Thank you.
What a man, what a man, what a man. How blessed we are that he's here. You know, this is the definition of a liberal. And again, Dennis Kucinich was a man I admired for his anti-war stance when everybody was swallowing the crap. This is the definition of a liberal. willing to respect or accept behavior or opinions different from one's own, open to new ideas. That is not a liberal today. Today they're suffering from libtarditis. Arrogant little boys and girls who hate you because you won't swallow the crap that they love to swallow. Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in this final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and not clothed. The world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. This is not a way of life at all in any true sense. Under the clouds of war, it is humanity hanging on a cross of iron, said Dwight D. Eisenhower, 5-star general, Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces, 2-term president. Not like these little boys with peckers smaller than a pencil, like Bill Clinton. Every time he got caught with his pants down, bombs away over Baghdad. No, getting my you-know-what sucked is not a sexual... No. Yeah, that Bill Clinton. The Nobel Peace of Crap Prize winner, Barack Obama. Little Georgie Bush. Biden, the war draft dodger. They all love war, and none of them fight. So thank you. It's our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliances with any portion of the foreign world. George Washington. So thank you all for coming from where all you came from. Thank you for supporting us. Remember, get your shirts, get your books, and support RFK Jr. And thank you all. Remember, 6 o'clock up in Woodstock at the Tinker Street Theater with Gary Null and a great movie. Thank you all for coming here. And thank you for fighting for freedom, peace, and justice. And we have someone outside that's fighting for our constitutional rights, of our voting rights. And she's here to say a couple of words. Where is she? Yep. Okay, she's out front. So thank you all for being here. Thanks so much.